What makes Rex unique is their fur. It's like feeling nothing. You can be having the worst day there is, and your hand just floats over. It's very calming. They're short. It's short, dense, plush. I'm Renea Slovak, and I'm from Michigan, and we've had Rexes since 1996. We started with my son's when he was 9 years old, 4-H project, and when he turned 14, I inherited him. We've come a long way. We've had a lot of help. Purchased our first breed from Rick and Hilda Lowing. The Rexes have changed a lot over the years. When we first started out, I had a little difficulty making weight, but thanks to buying some breeding stock with others, we improved our foot pads, and they're stronger, so their bone structure can carry their weight now. We very seldom have one with bad feet. Not that they don't have to have a resting pad sometimes, because some of my ladies are quite big. I have some that they push the 10-pound, over the 10-pound weight, but they make great brood does. That gives us, and I like breeding with a smaller, typier buck with the large brood does. I seem to have less problems with my kindling. It seems if I have the other way around, sometimes that's just more of a disaster than, we all want a good experience at the end of the day. What makes Rex unique is their fur. It's like feeling nothing. You can be having the worst day there is, and your hand just floats over. It's very calming. They're short. It's short, dense, plush. I like a little bit of a coarseness under for the guard hairs. It helps helps with the density. So most of the time I have a buck in the barn that has a little bit of coarseness to his coat. I don't breed at consistency, but in order to keep that going, I've found over the years that if you have a coat with a softer, if a rabbit's good type, with a softer density, a little bit of a coarseness will give it that oomph that it needs, and it just helps. Don't need a lot of special stuff. Most of them just get pellets, and hay maybe once or twice a week is that, if the quality of that, long as the breeding. A lot of people think they have to give them all that fancy stuff for the coats, and it really isn't. A lot of it's selective breeding and culling. Thanks to a lot of judges who I've listened to, when my rabbits get DQ'd for a reason, I go home and I cull. I find out what's wrong. We just had that conversation today. Well, we like them a little shorter. We like the width in the shoulders to gradually spread out for wider. If you have a rabbit that's pretty much straight back, that's not the proportion you want. You want a gradual rise from the shoulders, from the shoulders up, a gradual rise, and then when they peak, you want them to peak right about in the middle. And usually, if you look where their feet are and you pull up, that's where they should peak. Once in a while, a younger one might peak a little bit forward, and I will keep it in the barn, because usually as it develops and it fills out, they will balance out in the shoulders. If they start out with longer shoulders, it's rare that they fill in. I've had it once or twice, but most of the time, you know your body type. By the time they're 8 weeks old, you get an idea. That's my first call. 16 weeks is about another one. And I really don't like to sell anything under 16 weeks, because a lot can happen. They can look great at 8 weeks and then develop long shoulders or something. And when you're dealing with like youth or anything, that might be the only rabbit they're going to have. So I don't, even though it's cute to buy that cute little bunny to take home, it isn't always advisable. To me, it's better to get one that's 4 months old or so, that's got its junior size and it's going to fill in. You just, lots of times when my coats are developing, they don't all develop in the top, so I feel around the bottom, because your bottom part of the skirting in the back especially, the density starts there a lot, and then it just moves up. And you can feel it. Even this rabbit isn't in complete coat yet. She's transitioning, but when I feel down here, she has more of the density that I like, and it will just gradually move in. and fill in, just like connect the dots.
Do you feel that that's like specific to your line of Rex, or do you feel that's fairly true for like the breed as a whole?
Well, some. I think there's different lines exactly, because I've had some that when their coats come in, they look like they have chicken pox, and it comes in like little teeny spots, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger and fill in. And I don't have it that much anymore because I kind of culled for it, because you learn your coat and what you're developing, what you're looking for, and this works best for me, or they seem to develop to the line that I like. And it's just like anything else. When somebody's breeding, I don't always listen to the first comment, and I tell others that if you really feel good about something, just let it develop, because they might not look great as juniors and then great seniors, or they might be awesome awesome juniors, and then at a senior they're beyond. That's just how they are. I have show rabbits, and long as the coats, I have brood does that are like the ugly stepsister. They're related, they have all the genetics, but there might be a bigger doe, they might have stuff, but knowing the nice buck that I'm breeding it to fixes a lot of the problems. So you don't always have to have that show doe as a breeder. I've had people tell me I should get rid of stuff, and then the doe that I got rid of, when I tell them what produced it, they just couldn't believe me. So some of it's trial and error. You got to be willing to eat a lot of rabbit or have a good outlet, and you got to be willing to cull. I kind of was very fortunate. We bought one lilac rabbit and a brood doe, and I bred them, and I just started culling from there. The buck was a typey little buck. He didn't look like much as far as big size, but he had good type, and I just kept several different does. I tried them out to see what worked. My husband says it's because of the life they have. I'm not sure. I've never had a problem with fur. I've brought in rabbits, and I don't sing to them or anything, but they do have a pretty good life. I have doors in my barn that the cages never get shut. The rabbits just sit in the cage. I do believe the atmosphere makes a lot. If you we just had this conversation. I had two does that used the same cage that had litters on the wire. That does not happen in my barn, and it had to be the same cage. And I don't know if something's causing, if there's nothing can get in. I thought maybe a mouse. I don't know. I have no idea, but it was just a coincidence that they used the same cage. And Rexes usually, which is why I love them so much, they're awesome moms. I've had them raise wild bunnies. I pop babies in and out that are 2 weeks old and give them to them. If say I have a doe that's just not carrying good enough for a baby, so I'll take them away from her and give them to somebody else and rebreed her. They're very good at nurturing. I get an ornery one once in a while, but as long as she's taking care of the babies and not going after me, I don't have a problem. Their temperament's great.
What do you feel like flip her over? I do want to see the foot pads on that one. Like, is she? Oh wow, yeah, that's a lot thicker than.
Yeah. And that's not as like most of them.
So like, what would you say is ideal? If like for somebody that's not used to looking at the foot pads on them, or like if they're just getting started, what would you? What looks ideal and what is it supposed to be?
I actually have a couple. Which one have I got here? Yeah, this one's in a cage without even a board. She's,
That's a really thick foot.
Oh yeah.
Especially for Rex.
Yeah, and like I said, we started out, and I don't know if you remember my son when he showed, but he was just a little guy, and we would go literally have some that could show 1 week. We'd have to take 2 weeks off and show again, and they were finer boned. Of course, a lot of breeders were working on mini Rexes at the time, and that didn't help. But Tom James was a breeder from Utah that put a broken black in the auction in Columbus when we were at convention in Columbus, and I bought Mickey in the auction. He wasn't perfect, but he had awesome foot pads, and I bred him to about everything in the barn and culled, and we culled a lot. And to this day, I say we had good fur before then, but the foot pads. And I'll get one out and I'll show you. So you can see the foot pads on this one. And white usually is worse, but he just barely has any.
Those are super thick.
Yeah, super.
Yeah, so you want to be well furred, not
Yep,
and
yep.
not have any sores.
Yep. And this man took best of breed today. He beat the ladies.
Would you say that like does do better or bucks do better than nuts? Is it usually does?
Most of the time it's does. Again, I've had bucks that beat him, just like today. He did. The does is just, and a lot of them before the show, it's not mine today, but if the doe's bred, that just puts out more hormones or whatever the deal is, and their coats just, it looks better. And they're like anything else. They have great personalities. I'll tell you, when we were first learning, we didn't know anybody. And so lots of times we went and watched people at shows, how they groomed them. So we went home the first show and bought a grooming stone. And I don't know if I've got one in here, probably not. But it's just a bot stone. And that picked off the loose hair off. Because up until that point, all we'd ever been told is you put a little water on your hand and hand groomed them. So that's how we did it. And then I got to watching them, and there's like when I want the coat to be, just give it a little bit of oomph, I take a damp towel and I lay it across the top, and it makes that hair just stand right up. It just perks it. And you don't want to do it too soon before your show, or too late, because you don't want to be altered. You don't want any wet coat, anything, but you want that to be, give it a little stand, and that dampness. That's why with Rexes, you can show 3 different shows in one day, and you could have 6 different placings win. 6 different breeders can get best or opposite, because it all depends on the dryness in the air. By the second show today, I had a dryness to one of my coats, and you're getting static off it. So if it's a damp day outside, it affects all your coats. We've commented, you can be perfect, and a few hours later it's changed, or it can be improved. It just depends on humidity and the density, and that's where the difference in a lot of rabbits. I don't think they have that. At least I haven't heard anybody else talk about it, but we really notice it. And I'm sure if you've judged, you see. And I had one judge just recently. He judged for a show, and 2 rabbits got it. I did, 2 different rabbits. The next show, somebody else and I got different, and he kind of questioned it. And I said, "You didn't do anything wrong, but the coat changes." Where with some of the other breeds, they can win. They can sweep all the shows. It's rare where a Rex will. Not that it doesn't happen, but the quality in Michigan has improved. So we've worked with a lot of people. Our newcomers, we try to help them because the better they are. If I lose, and I'm happy for who wins, but when I lose, I go home and see what I got to call to get better, or what needs to be improved on. If I feel that it was just a day and the rabbit was right, okay, that's fine. But if there's something that I need to improve on, that's my incentive to be better. If you just have the same thing over and over, you're not going to get better. And the other states around you they're improving all the time. It keeps you up. I call it playing with the big boys. But that's part of it. Just taking them out, being willing to listen to other people's advice. You don't have to do everything, but if it sounds like something that might work for you, we talk about the feed we feed. Somebody asked me if my feed got expensive, if I'd change it. If my feed got too expensive, I'd have less rabbits. To me, that's more important than to start over with a feed again. And mine are raised to what I feed, not the other way around. And a lot of people will change. They're constantly changing feed, and I think that affects your fur.
The way it responds.
Yes, exactly. And that's probably with a lot of breeds. The only other breed I've ever raised is lilacs, and that's because one of my neighbor youth had lilacs, and she was having a little difficulty, and I had a big old lilac doe that we bred to one of her bucks, and the young lady went and won breed at convention that fall with Dear old Annie. And you know who had that.
Ready? Okay.
She was 5 minutes from me.
Okay.
Yeah, Annie lived to be 8 years old. We laugh about it. Yeah, but it was a Rex, and she had 13 babies when we bred to her buck. Then we had to whittle them down, and I didn't know what I was whittling, so. But that helped her that year. It was amazing, and there wasn't a single one that was. They were all lilacs in the bunch. There wasn't a single, and that's what's nice. It's a mutation, so whatever you breed it to, you might have a little bit of a softness in the coat, but you're going to get the length. So a lot of people use them for developing stuff. When they were working on the blue New Zealand, they come and got a blue Rex. Or when they were working on some of the brokens, they come and got some reds and broken reds from a friend of mine. And that's what I like about them. They're just kind of unique. They might be a mutation, but I love them. And I know there's some people really don't want to consider them a rabbit. To me, they get away with more than my kids do.
Okay, so the last two things I want to hit on is, are you cool with showing how you do grooming at all? Like no,
I have a problem.
Okay.
Yep.
On whatever rabbit you want to. It doesn't have to be him.
Well,
I know some people are cautious about.
Oh, nah, not me. I want to teach. I want people to learn. I don't use your ordinary toenail clippers. These are just little wire pliers, but they've got a spring on them, and it works great. And they're only like $1.99.
I've never seen those before. I mean, I've seen them before, but I've never really thought about it for that.
Yeah, and I just trim them. Oops, sorry, baby. Oops. No, he didn't hurt him. He just doesn't like it. But what's nice about these, being they're cheap at $1.99, I mean, some of them are $5, $6. You got to cover the hole and do all this stuff. This is so easy, and I even had my husband resharpen them for me before, but that's pretty much. And when I'm grooming, I actually use a brush sometimes. You're not supposed to use a brush on a Rex, but when I'm working on like the tail or down here, I will use the brush just to pick up the loose stuff. And this is just a plain little comb that one of my breeder friends in Texas, you can go down to the Sally's and buy a little box of them. And all I do is comb it, and it gets the dead stuff without tearing the undercoat out. And when it gets loose, I get enough loose hair on it. I take a little bit of, I put a couple drops of mouthwash, just a plain old mouthwash, Listerine, and I use my hands, and all that loose stuff just comes off without messing with my undercoat. And then you got a nice, and you don't have to do it every day. A lot of it, if your animal is in a clean environment, they will keep themselves clean. And like I said,
and so you just use the slicker brush just for the tail?
Yep. I don't use a brush on any of this. I also have a cattle blower at home. When they're blowing their coats, when a Rex is really blowing their coat, or their new coat's coming in and there's a dead spot sometimes across the back, I'll take a cattle blower and blow it. That cattle blower will bring all that dead fur out, and then you just groom it off without messing with any of your coat. And the cattle blower was the best thing. You could take it outside on the picnic table and go to town, or in the barn. My rabbits are used to it. I just hide them like this, and they jump around a little bit, but they get used to it. But then I have this towel, and I like, no, it's all right. I like linen, but I'll dampen this towel like this, and I don't know. And I'll lay it across the back, just for a period of time. And I watch breeders do this, not understanding, But I watched what they did. And it made sense because after a while, see what it does? You can see the difference, how it just stands that hair right up.
It's very interesting.
And that's just by observing. Yeah, it's not really wet.
Not wet, but it's enough to...
Dampness, yep. That's why that tells, you see why I say the air will do stuff, but it just makes the coat look, and I don't do it all the time because sometimes they're ready, but if you're going up for a big show and the competition is really stiff and you know that your animal might need that little extra, it's not altering the coat, it's not wet, if you feel it, it's not wet, but there's just enough humidity that it makes that coat stand. Can you see that?
I love his texture.
Oh yeah. He's a good boy. He was junior buck in Massachusetts. Yeah. I had senior buck and junior buck in the broken class. Yeah, come real close to breed that year. Once, I guess you gotta be happy. Once best of breed, I can't complain. But
if you were to have, or if somebody was gonna get started in Rex, what would you recommend? Like, is it okay to get a variety of colors, or is it better to just get one? Is it okay with that? Like,
well, I'm going to tell you, the best investment I would advising somebody to get in, you can have basically any old brood doe or a doe, but if I was spending the biggest share of my money, I would buy the best buck that you could buy, because that buck can fix a lot. You'd want a doe that's definitely good size, but if you have a really good typed buck, I've found they fix a lot. They fix a lot as far as not the other way around. If you have a buck that has faults, it just seems to throw more. And we had this conversation not too long ago. My son had this awesome buck that, out of the first litter that we got when my son bought his first litter. His dad let him have a litter of babies. That was 2 years it took us. But we kept a baby from it, and that buck produced wonderful does, wonderful does. He never produced a buck as good as him. Just he never outproduced himself. And I'm in the same way with does. It happens. But that's what I would say. If you have a limited budget, and you're starting out to get going, I'd spend more on a good buck and maybe get a couple brood does. Start from there, because then the daughters you could breed back to the father to improve. And then gradually, once you know, don't buy a whole bunch of rabbits, buy just a few till you learn what yours throw. Because sometimes, we've all done it, I bred a rabbit and it was like, mental note to self, don't ever do that again. That cross did not work. You get so you know your line, so that's kind of what I would say.
Does it matter on colors, is it should you stick to one or a couple colors?
Well, I would start out with a basic color.
Which would be
we started out with black, and our blacks through a white, and that's all we had in the barn. There was just blacks and this dirty white because he liked to spray and roll in it, and that's why we didn't have whites for years, because I figured all whites were dirty, until I realized, somebody told me that there are clean whites and dirty whites. And once you get a good body type, another judge told me, type first, color second, breed for type, and worry about the other later because it's only so many points. So I would just start with the basics. Don't get a whole barn full of stuff. I wouldn't recommend to start out with broken tries first. It's if you want a challenge, but for a beginner, there's so many pieces that you need, it overwhelms people. Where I think if you have just like black or black and blue, or chocolate, lilac, something that you're working with, to build your confidence to know what you're working with, and gradually increase. Because if you have a barn full of different colors, I have a lot of different colors now, but I didn't for a long time. We might have only had 4 colors for years. And then you want to, then you get in, you want to try something different, then I advise it. But nowadays, everything costs, so I always say spend for that good buck and then work him. Don't go out and show him off, because accidents can happen even in your barn, let alone at a show. And if you can't afford to lose him, we've all had him, taken him to a show, and you know, you really liked him, but something happened and he either come down sick, stressed, or whatever. You never get a litter out of him. So that's what I would advise. Most of the time, that's what I do with the kids that are showing. If you have a breeder that can mentor you, it's nice to mentor kids. Then again, you want to make sure that they have the parents, the backing, they're going to support, that it's not going to turn into a business, because not every rabbit is a show rabbit. You have culls for a reason. You know, they can't be show rabbits, and unfortunately we've had people that get them and then they sell them all, and then people wonder why they can't, you know, complain when they come to a table. No. Sometimes you tell people they only keep one or two. I might keep one or two from a litter, you know. Sometimes I get a few more, but you only need one or two. You can't fill up all your cages, because once they're full, what are you going to do with, where are you going to put the ones that you want to keep now? So that's why a lot of kids only have 10 or 15 holes, and you start filling them up. That's what happened to us. The holes filled up, and they either died accidentally or of old age. But it taught me that not everyone, and that's a temperament, is a cull. Not everyone's a show rabbit. Not every rabbit is the one you want to breed with, because that could breed it in, and then you'd have more biters. I had small grandchildren. I didn't want them getting their fingers bit. You know, they were sticking their hands in the cages. So that's kind of what I advise.